Good day to everybody and welcome on behalf of the Academy of Executive Coaching. I can see that people are still arriving, so we're just going to take a minute to let people come in, but a very warm welcome to you. And especially to my guest, Bill Schaninger, a very warm welcome to you and good morning. Thank you for joining us so early.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I think that I think we've got everyone here now and people may still start to arrive. So I think it'd be good if you just introduce yourself as a starting point, Bill.
Bill Schaninger. I'm from the very eastern part of Pennsylvania. So the Lehigh Valley, Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton. I grew up there. I've had a long run, like in behavior change kind of work. I mean, I was a college athlete, which meant that I stayed in college probably longer than one might, just because I ran out of eligibility. And I started working at a place called Kids Peace National Centers for Kids in Crisis while I was still going to school. So it's like court-ordered youth from let's say 6 to 8 to 18 or 20, depending on the state, because they slide the age of majority, right? If they were ordered. I ran a unit there. I was given a unit at 22, which is kind of in hindsight astonishing, So 20 to 25 beds, 8 to 10 staff, and then a properly trained social worker, and then attended to by a psychiatrist. I did that for 5 years. Did a series of those. Realized I really liked explaining why people behave the way they do. I wasn't super crazy about the intensity of that environment. It was starting to burn me out.
Yeah.
Went back to school at night to get an MBA because I felt really exposed on not actually knowing how to run it. Like we were all doing God's work in our mind and super purposeful. Just didn't know what I was doing. Got the MBA at night, and there I discovered a strategic plan, an operating plan, a marketing plan. All these plans were written in some cases with false specificity, but with the assumption that people were just going to do it. And then you'd see the reality, which was some people had no intention of doing it. So I thought, well, I like explaining the way people behave, but I think I just want to study it. So that was in 96, I stopped working altogether, got married in April, and moved to Auburn, Alabama on to start August 1st in Auburn's PhD program. So I got a PhD in management, which in that era, you think of it as IO psychology taught in a business school. Because in that era for academics, I'm sure many of the people on will know this, it's just IO psychologists were basically trading at a 1/3 discount to people who taught org behavior in business schools. I don't know why exactly, but we were all trained basically the same way. And so I thought I was going to be an academic. And at the end of the 90s, I was out on the market looking for academic jobs. I had a nice offer in hand from St. Joe's, but I wasn't quite done. I was ABD, and they were discounting me and said, "So when you finish, we'll pay you the full rate." And that irritated me.
Oh, yeah.
That deal. It started feeling like just a glorified GTA again. And I saw a thing for McKinsey, and I applied. It was an academic fellowship in Boston. They actually wanted a fully tenured professor already to do like a year secondment. And they're like, "So, hey, thank you, Skippy, but we'd like someone who's done and had a career. But if you don't mind, we sent your stuff on to our colleagues in London who are hiring." And that literally is how it happened. I mean, the normal McKinsey recruiting cycle is almost a year. And mine was about 8 weeks, 2 trips to London, about 25 interviews. And I joined into London on August 1st, 2000. And then nearly 23-year run, 22 and 10 at McKinsey, where I just a wonderful run. I was allowed to bring all the academic rigor to bear across, refineries, chemical plants, power plants, nuke and fossil, mines, software developers, Tennessee Valley Authority, right? I mean, government institutions, things like that, but always with the guise of how do you run the place? And so I did a lot on large scale change, a lot of cost cutting, a lot of trying to make restructuring work, sometimes unsuccessfully, frankly, culture change, and then increasingly into talent, which led towards the last arc, started our people analytics practice, ran our global talent practice, led all of our work on future work, and then great attrition, great attraction. And all of that led to the tail end of my career, which was culminated with doing McKinsey Talks Talent with my colleague, Brian Hancock. And then off of that, deciding to write the book, Power to the Middle.
And it's a great book. I've got it here. It's very, it's rooted in research. It's well researched. I recommend it to, I've got my fancy background on. I can't really show it, but it's Power to the Middle. Why managers hold the keys to the future of work. And it's co-written with yourself, Brian Hancock, and Emily Field.
Brains of the operation, as an aside. Brian and Emily were the brains. It was my idea, and then they carried me. That's how that worked out.
Well, my Yorkshire granddad would say, "Don't put yourself down, love. There's plenty of others to help with that."
Yes, very much so.
And I guess I'm interested in what gave you the idea for the book. What was the premise of it?
Two parts. Just you showed the book. For those of you, just as an aside, because it's, out 9 months now or something. For those of you that have an Amazon Prime membership, you probably get an audiobook for free. And if there's any portion of my voice suggesting that you're ready to go to sleep, I'm the narrator of the book. It's true. It's really true. It was so much harder than I thought. I obnoxiously thought I'd just walk in and read my book, and isn't this going to be easy? 2 weeks later, several migraines and a blown voice, but we got there. Right?
Oh, wow.
But yeah, and so you get it. And for some people, just having it on in the background in the car is easier, right? But I would agree with you. It's far more readable than the first book, Beyond Performance 2.0. I think the nature it was written, it's more accessible. Two things happened. One, I had a long career of cost cutting. Yeah. I mean, just through a lot of the knots and into the teens, a lot of cost cutting, often in an industrial environment with unions, whether it's work councils in Europe, or very strong unions in the United States. And that impacted me. I can certainly say I never felt like I was at a place where it didn't have room to cut. I didn't always feel great necessarily that we changed the work enough to make it a place worth running on the other end, right? So there was certainly value created. I'm certain about that. I'm certain we took into account safety. I'm not certain that we made the human experience of that place better, right? And so that was one. That was weighing on me quite a bit. And I write about that in the introduction. And, fair credit to McKinsey for allowing me to write that introduction.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right? I mean, when you think about like the review in the FT, where they were calling it the irony of McKinsey consultants writing a book about managers, right? The second part was when I was leading our work on future work, and obviously I is colloquial I. There was a team, right? I just happened to be leading it.
Yeah.
We broke it up in looking at how work was changing and meaningfully. And originally that was automation. It was pre-COVID, right?
Yeah.
And then the impact on COVID. And COVID seemed to change a lot of things. Like, who would have guessed that you couldn't go when you went to the big box retailer, you couldn't go in the big box retail store.
Yes.
Right.
That was a shock. That was a shock.
Right. It's like, you just drive up and they put it in the back of the boot. What? How does that work? Right. So, I mean, there was that. And then we started looking at, well, what do they know? What do employees need to know? And can we ever make a workplace that people want to come back to? The answer to those questions was always the same: the person they work for. Is in many cases, managers. The problem, of course, was when we were looking at all of our great attrition, great attraction data, a massive source of the issue was the person they work for.
Well, that's right. Then that's, right? We obviously train coaches, and, what we find is often the manager will bring in someone to be coached, and, the manager wants to see a change, and actually the issue is the manager. So, no, absolutely.
Yeah, you can imagine it was both. The good news is we know the answer. The bad news is the answer is the problem. It's like, well, now what? Right. So that was the impetus there.
Yeah. And what sort of recommendations would you make to businesses out there? I mean, I read the financial press, and there's a lot in there about how many thousands of people are on the cusp of being let go. What should companies be thinking about right now?
Yeah, boy, isn't it interesting? I mean, I'll tell you, I've been a little dismayed that, one, it's as if none of us have ever taken an economics class. And so we are really willing to talk ourselves, or trying to talk ourselves into a recession, particularly a global one, I might add. It's remarkable, right? I mean, so there is, particularly on the labor market, there is still a significant gap between empty roles and people looking for work.
Yeah.
Right. At the height of that, we were in the US, we were short around 8 million people from empty roles to people looking for it. To put that in context, in the financial crisis, we wiped out 7.9 million jobs. So that would mean you'd have to lose every job we lost in the financial crisis to get to parity. It's come on. There is no shortage of work there. What we have done is take a populace and said, working for them isn't great. So what have you had? 3 years, year on year on year, of record starts of small businesses. People wanting to hang their own shingle.
Yeah.
People saying, hey, you know what I've discovered? The nonlinear workday is what I need. I'm sorry, right? I want to take my kids to school. I'm not accepting that someone else is taking them anymore. Or I want to make them breakfast. Then I'll come online and work. But then, hey, at lunch, I got to do this thing for my mom who's sick. Then I'll come back on and work some more. Then when the kids come home, I'm going to help them with their homework. And I got a spouse that comes home or whatever. And at night, I'll come back on and finish my work. If that works for you, good. If it doesn't, no thanks. Now, I'm talking about the labor part, not the boss part. But the obvious part is, well, that doesn't seem that difficult. Like, we deluded ourselves into thinking that people came to work every day, 9 to 5. The occupancy rates of offices has never, ever been more than 70% in the big concentrated areas.
That's right.
Now it's running around 50%. It's crept back a little bit. But is it the worst thing that people say, I'd like to work for a place that I respect? I feel good about the badge. I work for a boss who's not a jerk, right? Who looks after me.
That's a low bar. That's a fairly low bar.
Right? But listen, we're surrounded by recalibration. Think about, when you were in school and what your A levels looked like. And now consider what kids are asked to do today. The amount of homework you would have gotten and what they're asked for. Where we would have set the bar, the knowledge versus Uber.
Oh, yeah,
right?
The knowledge.
You know what I mean? By the way, I'm such an Anglophile. My time in London was wonderful. I will continue making London references. But, the
well,
idea
for
is
anyone who's outside of London, the knowledge is what the London taxi driver, the black cab drivers would have to take. It's really intense. They would have to know every street.
If you see a large man who's probably eaten one too many pasties on a moped with a map laid out, that's what it is. So, this is, to me, we've done all this recalibration to where now we're acting as if what people are asking for, decency, respect, purpose, a feeling that they can grow at work, a team that actually supports them as a human being first. When did that become too much? Right? Look, I'm not talking about the goofy stuff like I want to come to work in bare feet and bring my dog. Right? That
sounds quite fun.
Sure. But it may not be for everybody, right? So that to me, that recalibration, I think has also come with, well, what do we actually expect of managers? And I think unhelpfully, there's a portion of, just say the tech world, which seems to disproportionately get a lot of the press, I think unhelpfully, where they're saying things like, well, why do we need bosses? Well, I don't know. Most people have left to their own devices. They're going to do what they want to do, which probably isn't going to be coordinated.
Yes.
So you'll see an artisanal class in tech that kind of wants to do what they want to do because much like academic freedom and much like, the artiste, they know best. Right. Yeah. Well, that's great if you're playing with your capital. If you're playing with somebody else's capital and people, you probably ought to do what they want you to do. So I think we have that tension there. I also think we have this issue of, for the better part of 30 years, we've beat the hell out of these rules. I'm 54, right? I graduated in the early 90s. Re-engineering, right-sizing, downsizing, E-HR. They're in London, Exalt and Exchanging literally had business models around taking HR functions out at scale, creating an outsourcing model, and then pushing a ton of work to the frontline manager or the employee. That's a pretty good gig if you can get it,
I remember that happening. I remember that being done to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That was when we decided we were looking just for the fact-based and said, well, let's test out some of this stuff. How we really made the job that difficult. And I think in a book, we asked like 800 or 1,000 managers to tell us where they were spending their time. It was so alarming how little time was actually spent on leading people.
Yeah.
Feed the beast, bureaucracy, right? Administrative, standing meetings. Well, when do you actually get time on talent? And the answer was tiny little bit.
Yeah, once or twice a year tops, if you're lucky.
Well, yeah, right. When worse, as part of a formal process that everyone hates.
Yeah. So I think you've really set out the premise for the need there. What in practice, how should organizations be making this thinking work?
Well, there's a role for everybody here. There's certainly a role for the executives. No doubt about it. The people who the middle managers work for. There's certainly a role for HR, and there's probably also a role for the person themselves. I mean, everyone has agency, right? I'd hate to think that we gave the impression that everything is done unto these folks, right? I don't think that's appropriate. Not at all. We're all adults. We all have agency. If we run anything during COVID, probably have more agency than we thought. Maybe a little scary. But, as evidenced by, you have a lot of coaches on here. I bet many of them have their own shingle out, right? In their own private practice. I think we've seen an increased move towards even a portfolio career, side gigs, side hustles, and maybe something substantive is the way people want to do it. So I think we are in an era where work has to be in service of the person, not in service of someone else. I think that's happening increasingly, just as an aside.
I think that's true. And I come up against a lot of organizations that speak to people in quite a parental voice. So although you're saying we're adults and to a certain extent as a person, I think
well, if you don't mind the non sequitur, Karen, I think it's a good point, right? We'll go to what the HR people and the bosses have to do in a second.
Yeah.
This parental voice thing, I think, is super interesting because, we have 5 generations in the workforce now.
Oh, well, yeah.
Right. Think about it. We have boomers clawing on primarily because they didn't save nearly enough money for retirement, had a couple divorces, and many of them can't afford to stop working.
Well, I haven't saved enough for my retirement, but I haven't had the divorces either.
Okay, then you've not nearly been spendthrift enough, okay? Enough with the summer vacations that last all of August. Enough. Then there's obviously the Gen Xers, and then you work your way down through. There has been, in my era, our era for those over 50, or let's say 45 and older, and loco parentis was a thing in K to 12, right? I mean, it was a thing. Moms and dads were working in many cases or not, and then they put their kids in the school and they assumed that, and that's why you had corporal punishment, right? So they could do in terms of like, Johnny needs to be spanked. Of course, Johnny's going to get a spanking if he talks back to the teacher. But then, at some point, universities kind of had a little bit of a wink in loco parentis, like where we allowed a little alcohol on the campus, or we allowed this, or whatever, right? It was an enclave where even the local police really didn't come on, right? It was the school was in charge. So much of that has changed over time, where it's become an almost legalistic framework about you hit 18, you're an adult, or it's on the parents. The challenging thing, though, has been that the youngest members of the workforce have been served by K through 12 institutions that are probably not fully preparing them for life outside.
Yes.
In cahoots with the parents. We'll have another run at the parents on helicopter parenting and whether or not it's made kids exposed to enough failure and difficulty to prepare them for life as an adult.
That's a good point.
Right. But also universities, particularly for the youngest members of the workforce, have either had college or high school or both massively disrupted by COVID.
Yes.
And so in a place that's digital first, they could be sitting next to someone and texting them rather than talking to them. In many cases, they are massively unprepared for the emotional and sociological and psychosocial impact of work. Who am I? What matters to me? How do I feel in this place? What about in that team? What's going on in that team? In many cases, you're talking about a group that are really unprepared for the emotional load that is adulthood. Yes. As an employee. Yes. So, I mean, and I don't want to be Junior Freud or anything, but I think, now it's interesting. It's another one of those situations where we have a group that's come into the workforce that now fully spans. It's not like across the 5, they want things different. Most people want to work for a company they're proud of. I mean, I know when my former employer would make their way into the New York Times, it was not exactly a chest thumping moment.
Yes.
Right. It was more like, yes. Right. I mean, even if you bleed blue and you love the institution, like, okay, that's not good. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Most people, I used to go to refineries or chemical plants and I'd sit across the street from the gates and I'd watch when people came out of the gate if they took their jacket and badge off.
That's a good tell, isn't it?
It's a great tell, right? Are you proud? Are you wearing your swag or not? Right. People want that. They want to work for someone who's considerate of them. In many cases, they need to know that mom or dad, also known as the boss, cares about them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so in some respects, we've had 30 years of legal and compliance in the regulatory environment telling us that we can't talk about feelings. We shouldn't ask about people's homes. Like then COVID threw a lot. I mean, COVID was a real line in the sand. There were some people who were just calling up and saying, haven't seen you in a couple of days. I know we're all holed up at home. How you doing?
Yeah.
Okay, that's compassion as human first, right? You are a human. You're a colleague. You might even be my friend. I'm going to check in on how you're doing. Versus, well, don't ask about mental health. Okay.
Or worse, how many of your tasks have you checked off?
Yeah, regardless of the fact that you look like you're at your wit's end.
Yes.
Have you gotten that TPS report in?
I know.
Yeah. So anyway, that context, I think the 5 generation has made it incredibly harder, for sure. I think, I mean, just for those people on who've gone through any kind of, span of layer exercise, and with all due respect to the former BCGers on the planet, 6x6 was incredibly stupid. I'm sorry. There is nothing in life that you can distill down to going, it must be spans of 6, it must be 6 layers. That is absurd.
Tell that to the lawyers as well.
Oh, I mean, come on, give me a break. The span of a manager should be driven by a few things. Does the manager still have to do their own work? Right? Like a general counsel will often still do a little bit of their own case, right? Or decide what goes outside or stays inside. Is the breadth of what your unit is doing, is it homogenous? So it was an economy of scale. You're all doing the same thing, or really variable, and they kind of packed it together and got an economy of scope. If you did the scope play, you probably need a smaller span because you never get intellectual scale of figuring, I got to pivot to here, I got to pivot to here, I got to pivot to here. So you'll see, heads of HR now who are also heads of marketing and heads of community involvement, right? The 3 experiences, employee, customer, and community. They're not getting any scale from that.
No.
Right? Okay, that should be smaller. So when you look at things like, are they still carrying their own tools? Is the unit doing variable work? And the people who work for them, broadly trained the same way with similar levels of skills, a la call center. You know what a call center is? Everybody doing the same thing, trained to the same standard. You can blow that span out. Go ahead, take it to 20. No problem. Probably augmented with an expert system. Most other, not so much. So that has made it next to impossible. The burden pushed out by finance, HR, IT, compliance onto managers, also known as self-serve and or manager contributed, right? When they were under pressure to cut budgets, they just pushed the work to the frontline manager.
Yeah.
And standing meetings.
Yeah.
It's as if we have forgotten that it's okay to have an ad hoc meeting.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right. So now what have you done? We've made the job impossible. No, the coup de grace, we mock them. We have cartoons, we have movies, we have jabs. It used to be if you were a vice president at GEC, when GEC was a thing, it's like, well, Lord Weinstock must think you rate. You're at GE or something else, right? Not anymore.
No.
You're a middle manager, you're a source of derision. It's like, how quickly can I get out of this job? So that, the environmental, both the actual nature of the work, plus the environment around it, it is no longer, I've made it, I've got pens, I've got a little, go on. Now, listen, clearly, there was an environment there was middle-aged white dudes, like who had a wife at home looking care of the kids, and they came out to their sea of cubes and saw their domain. I get it. Okay. But you still need the essence of that leadership occurring, and it's just not there.
So what do you think the answer is then?
Well, for one, attack the job. I mean, before we even change the person. I mean, look, I'm a fully paid up member of a third of the people in these roles are unfit to be leaders. And they were probably good individual contributors who, because of some version of the hate point system, the only way they could get paid more was to be called manager, right? So I fully believe a third are not up to it. And we should make it okay to go back to being a good, valued individual contributor and pay them what it's worth. But I also think we've made the jobs impossible. Just strip away the nonsense. Let them go back to actually having, I mean, could you imagine paying your children to go to a piano teacher only to discover the piano teacher doesn't talk to your children?
I'm a piano student, so that's a very apposite example. But no.
Right? These people are not getting feedback. They're not getting coaching. It's like the formality that says I have to write something down about you. How does it not create agita and anxiety in the workforce when people don't know where they stand? So, I mean, one is just change the role, make it clear and obvious your job is to lead first and to do administrivia second.
I
Full
think
stop.
that's great. And reading the book, a lot of it points to trust as well. So the old school kind of, you have to check all these things because we don't trust people to get on with work, but also we have to be trusted as managers to lead in the right way and to be freed up from all the bureaucracy to actually allow that space for human connection.
Love to find every person from procurement who agreed to an ERP installation and then encourage them to live with the consequences of what they've wrought. Funny enough, thinking what you bought there, it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this trust thing is a big deal. The checkers checking the checkers is a little insane, sure. I do think in general, we've lost some sense of our humanity around whether or not people are willing to give you a good day's work for a good day's pay. I think,
Yeah.
I think by and large, we've become largely economic in our exchange, not social. Right. I mean, there's 70 years of good science, started with Hommins and Blau, working our way through Bob Leiden and others on leader member exchange and team member exchange. And that, that's the kind of stuff. When it's working, it happens pretty nicely. I mean, all relationships are a bank account. Sometimes you invest in, you build up credits. Sometimes you got to draw those credits down because you're having a rough go.
Yeah.
But the trust comes from being able to say, I need help. Actually, I'm dealing with some stuff. I just need a little help. It's okay. Should be.
Yeah, we can't all be running on full the whole time.
No.
24/7.
Well, it also brings us to one of the other things. I said change the role. The other one is, could you fill the complement back up, please? We've been running so long understaffed.
Yeah.
Primarily the rise of the accountants after SOX, to then assume that because they're now the chief financial officer, they're the junior CEO. That has not been good in most cases for organizational culture. And it doesn't mean that the people there are vile or anti-human. It just means we've given one function disproportionate power. If you think about the two capitals, money and people, when was the last time anyone worked the weighted average cost of capital? They don't. Money's cheap. Even with a couple bips on it. I mean, we were so used to near zero rates that we're losing our mind about 5.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Give me a break. I remember when mortgages were at 18%.
I know.
Okay.
Yes, I remember that.
So, I mean, I just think because we've allowed finance disproportionate authority, we've allowed their approach to working capital to infect people. That's a mistake. When you have people not feeling good about taking vacation because they feel like they're kind of screwing their teammates. When they get married, they cut short their honeymoon. They can't go off on training. They can't take a sabbatical. God forbid they get sick. When everyone around you has to pick up the slack because there's no buffer, you put an asymmetric burden on the individual. You literally take something that should be recharging and soul nourishing, and you make it a source of guilt. It's unacceptable, but you don't ever get the recharge.
It's absolutely wrong. And as a coach training organization, we're the recipient of many people who are coming to us looking for an out because they're frankly burnt out.
Yeah,
and that's immoral. I mean, it's just wrong.
I just don't get. I don't get what the end game is. It's as if, most people get this. If you run your car out of gas, it stops working, but you can fill it back up relatively quickly. You've not broken it. If you don't fill it with oil, it's going to break. If you never take it to the garage, it's most certainly going to break. If it blows up, it's broken, and you don't have the value of anything anymore.
Yeah.
Most people can wrap their heads around that around physical machines. Why are humans different?
I don't know.
It's just so that to me, we said, okay, change the role, make the job doable for sure. These are all for the bosses. I also think going back to the world of a little bit of power and agency. How about we go back to clearly defining real role clarity? Role clarity in the simplest sense, whether it's for a job or a task. What am I asking you to do? What good looks like? By when? With whom? What can you decide on your own? And what do you have to come back to me for? If we just practiced role clarity. People know what they're on the hook for. They
That's
actually don't have to have
simple.
questions.
That is such a simple idea, and it would
Yeah.
make such a great difference.
And nobody likes discovering that four other people are working on the same thing or slightly different, or they work the PowerPoint deck. Now leave it with me. How would you know what to leave it with? And
Yeah.
equivalently for the people also, their guessing probably isn't great. I mean, I
Mm.
think that, you know, if we were ever looking to have a real protest vote, how about just refuse to do anything unless you have role clarity?
I
What
love it.
exactly are you asking me to do? You know, it's not saying I'm not going to do it.
It's just
Saying
saying,
I need to know what. Let's talk about what this actually is.
what can I decide for myself?
Yeah,
And do I need
yeah.
to refer to others? Yeah,
I mean,
that's
particularly flexibility, right? I mean, flexibility at its most. What I'm going to work on, how I'm going to do it, who I'm going to do it with, when I'm going to do it, and where I'm going to do it. So now you have role clarity and actual flexibility. If we could just do those two things, a lot of people feel like they have a lot more agency. People feel like they have agency. They don't feel like victims. When they don't feel like victims, they can actually bring more of themselves to it. You show me a prolonged sense of victimhood, and I'm going to show you somebody who's checked out.
That's right. That's right.
Hmm.
And unhappily so.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think you've given us a flavour of the why and the what. How would you suggest starting to make these changes? Because I guess that's more of a exec responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are
Exec and
those people?
HR
Yeah.
can help them a
Okay.
little bit. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, one of the things I made as a throwaway comment was, I'm a paid up member of a third of them, whether it's Gallup or Zender or the other places. I think a third of them aren't up to it. So I think, I do think there's just a basic rule of thumb here, which is, by the way, it's not like it's not, I mean, yes, I do like meritocracies when they're fair. I do.
Mm.
I do.
Mm.
I don't believe that all people are given the same kinds of skills. I think people
Yeah,
have different
that's true.
skills. I think the matching of those skills to the task at hand is important. The rest of us call that selection. Selection matters, right? So I think job one, pick better.
And how? I mean, but given that they haven't, and a third of them are the wrong people,
Weed them
what
out.
should
Weed them out.
and how?
Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. We tend to use the lawyers as the excuse not to do it. Anything resembling observation, direct supervision, 360s, talking to people who's working, and God forbid you actually talk to the person and say, "Are you enjoying this job?" If you make it clear that they don't have to lose social capital or standing, and you're not going to take a massive economic hit.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. People need the
Okay,
people in the bench to keep their pay packet the way it is.
move them over, put them back into being a valued individual contributor. And by the way, if they're not that good, they shouldn't have been there anyway.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you have to have one of the two skills. You either have to be a really good leader or you have to be a really good contributor. Sometimes you get both, but don't ask everybody to have both. Right. Make it okay. And then, if you made hiring mistakes, that's on you. Write the check, put them on garden leave, help them find another job, and move them out. The negative derivative you have by having lousy leaders in an organization doesn't just impact that person, it impacts everybody beneath them and around them. It is, and not to be overly dramatic, it is the cancer in organizational cultures.
I can see some thumbs up coming up, Bill. Oh, that's good. We've got a question. I don't know if I'd just let you finish answering the how part.
So the first one
then,
is, so make it hard. So first one, clean it up. Second,
yeah,
make it harder to get the damn job. This promotion of convenience, right, is just really inappropriate. That's much more about the hiring manager wanting the devil I know and the person they're comfortable with, which is also likely to keep the secrets buried, also likely to keep enabling the hiring manager, right? Make the job harder to get. And the last part, make it even harder to keep it. And this is the one that grates me so much. We've made performance appraisal a perfunctory exercise that everyone hates, and it changes nothing. It does not actually improve performance. The performance for these people should not be attending meetings. It should be leading the people in the organization. Are you promoting people? Are you helping them with mobility? In aggregate, are your talent reviews showing that people are better matches to where they're going? That kind of stuff, right? I mean, this is not beyond the wit of man. It's good HR and it's good leadership. It just takes the humility to acknowledge that you're not very good at it now and the courage to do something different. Right? That's
but
it.
I mean, you say it's easy, and yet I'm not seeing it happening.
It's cowardice.
Yeah.
Cowardice and aversion to something different. And I don't mean cowardice as like, oh, cowardly lion. I mean, people are so wired towards, if it's right in front of me, even if it sucks, at least I know it.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, think about the number of people who are in marriages or relationships that actually aren't very fulfilling or nourishing.
Yeah.
The fear of being alone or finding someone else will keep them in a lousy relationship. Do you know where that ends? After you get your first divorce or breakup under your belt. Think about the parallel to divorce. If you get married today in mostly Western Europe or the US, you have about a 50-50 chance if neither of you have been married before. If one of you has been married before, it's about a 1 in 3 chance. If between the two of you, you have 2 marriages, it's like 1 in 4.
Yeah.
Why does that change? Because you went through the emotional contagion once. You're like, oh, I survived that. I could do that, right? Very similar thing to people quitting jobs. People of our era, if we had a gap in our resume, particularly if you're male,
God, it's shaming. You
right?
Can't have
You're male, and you can't claim childbirth, and you're like, would you buy the state hospital? Right? So you had to explain. If you had too many employers, there must be something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Okay, that is all gone. There is no social stigma to having a series of things. Okay, so now what do? You have people who are leaving without, I mean, this blew me away. 60% of the people saying they were going to leave in great attrition, 2/3 of those didn't have a job in hand. Okay, so the point is all the social contagion is gone. So in that case, why aren't we directly addressing poor leadership?
So you've asked the question back to me now. I asked you that question.
No, this is the turnabout is fair play part.
Well,
do we have any more questions? Do we have fun provocations? Why is the American shouting at the screen? Is that what we're going with?
Let's see. We've got a question from Kim who says, I'm coaching a leadership team where the one leader CFO refuses to make annual planning for the associates. Rather, the CFO every Monday holds task meetings. The rest of the company know exactly what to do and how they are performance evaluated. How can we convince such a leader that the future is here and people are hired to contribute, not to be exploited? Lovely question.
That person comes from professional services at some point in their life. That's body shopping the bright young things you've hired. So, you'd see it a lot. Okay, we'll come to meritocracy in a second. For the people who refuse to plan, what they really want is a cobble of people they can deploy at their whim to make sure they hit their task and their numbers. And they are indifferent and not in any way interested in the growth, development, purpose, and or motivation of the people they're body shopping. And they should just know that those people there are chattel. So you will not have that group, not for long.
I don't like that word, but I think you're right. I noticed.
Yeah, well, it's an indifference. You don't treat them. Well, we should have that reaction because they don't treat them like humans. They treat them like robots, right? We had a run where our engagement managers, when I was still at McKinsey, and they just weren't doing very good work planning. So the associates could never get ahead of knowing, like, well, when could I go to dinner, or could I get to the gym, or something. Like we lost a little bit of our way they lost a little bit of our way on standards of work norms, what it took for the team. And then it was like each day the most junior of the partners or the EM doled out work. It's terrible for the juniors. Terrible. It's also incredibly self-indulgent for the leaders.
I remember that. I had a career in pharmaceuticals, and the McKinsey guys would come in and sit in a cupboard somewhere, and they'd be there at 7 a.m, and we'd pop our heads round and go, eat something. Come out, eat something.
Bright young things with just the right amount of insecurity and a lot of energy can get a lot done. That's, There was a question in there about meritocracy.
They were like this.
Yeah, unfortunately. There was part of that once. My face blew out. It got better.
So, Kim, I hope that answers your question. We've got this meritocracy question from Dorota. In an organization like McKinsey, where meritocracy is brought to an extreme, up or out, what are the mechanisms to implement for the middle managers to trust there won't be negative consequences for when they show vulnerability Otherwise, the courage to stand up is probably even more difficult to be found. Yeah, that's a great question.
It's a good question. I mean, look, I'll tell you, even in McKinsey, the courage or the obligation to dissent, it's an evergreen battle to keep that there. Okay, just as you put in things that seem like it's a good idea, like a confidential or even anonymous feedback, all the things that you put in, go, oh, this is a good idea. They erode at the essence of daily and in the moment feedback. And in some cases, what could be perceived as difficult conversations, but necessary for the work and necessary for the growth of both parties. It's always difficult. The meritocracy in general, the velocity of the meritocracy will change based on the nature of the work. So if you're in professional services and you are committed to having a broad range of experiences, then the velocity of the amount of feedback you get works. So the accompanying feedback documentation. So the end of the year, by the way, good use for anyone actually interested in Gen AI. If you insist on weekly feedback conversations and a decent documentation of it, your end of the year review is a summation and a synthesis with much more time spent on the development plan. If you're not writing any of that down, it will seem like a surprise, absolutely be weighted towards the end of the year and not show anything around the trajectory during the year. But I digress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that irritates me, how badly we get appraisal done. Meritocracy in general, though, can have a different velocity. It should be tied to your approach to talent. Are you growing general managers? Do you expect them to rotate every 2 years? Are you growing technical or functional leaders where you'd expect something like 4 years, 5 years in role and people to grow? In which case, just what drives merit is up to you. You should decide, though, in the longer cycle times, whether survival and mere attendance is going to be rewarded. We do have large pockets of the workforce who believe that showing up is the job. And we could allow right? We could allow just a little bit of a derivation. Those of us who are Gen Xers, we've created this. We took our kids.
Put your jacket on the back of the chair.
We also took our kids to sports where they were given trophies for participation.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We went to teachers and we argued bad grades. We went to principals and argued punishment. We set up play dates, right? We have created a generation of now employees who actually aren't comfortable with being told they're not good enough. That's a problem from a coaching standpoint. You have to have both the aspiration, and I'm not even saying be straight deficit based. You have to have an aspiration for what you want and an honest reckoning of what you are. Mm-hmm. If you never hear the honest reckoning of what you are, why would you ever have impetus to get better? So I think that's a pretty big issue. So for the meritocracy, it does not have to be extreme. Extreme is a value-laden word. It could just be you sign up for a velocity. McKinsey only works to that kind of talent because there's a reasonable expectation that you will continue progressing if you're good, thriving, and growing. I mean, I made it 22 years in a place that the average tenure is 3 years, but I signed up for that. You know what I mean? I think it's got to be part of the value proposition and people know what they're getting.
I think they don't know. That's part of the issue.
You could argue the truth in advertising rule should be there for marketing, for recruiting material.
Yeah. Well, questions are flowing in. We've probably got time for. We've got 2 or 3 more questions here, and
really good ones, but not about the size of my bald spot.
And I'm also keen to hear about what's next for you. I don't know if you're ready to talk. We spoke about that a little bit.
Sure.
So we've got a question from Kat. Do you have any advice on where you can find business cases to reward managers on managing, not on contribution? Very few organizations, particularly in culture and arts space, figure this area of performance into reward.
It's a really good one. I used to spend a lot of time with clients, particularly when they were facing like austerity measures or something else, and or any kind of like annual budgeting exercise, and say, like dieting, the first 10 pounds are kind of easy, and the second 10 can be kind of tough. So what's the reinforcement mechanism in there to keep people going? I think self-funding some things ought to be okay. Like say, hey, we need you to cut 10%. How about the first 5% are house money? The second 5% we'll split with you 50-50. And you can reinvest that into your peers, right? Something like, into your colleagues. That should be okay. I mean, I think acknowledging that, like, particularly, if there's something that needs to change, acknowledge the first part just needs to happen because it needs to happen. And when it starts getting tough, offer problem-solving help, but also a little bit of a holdback so you can actually invest in your crew.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hope that's good for you, Kat. There's another question from Leah. In the company I'm working for, we see lots of managers are doing more firework than investing time to their people to develop them. We roll out a training to all managers to support them to learn and utilize some basic coaching techniques in their day-to-day life. If you have one advice, what would you give as an advice to managers on how to keep coaching mindset when doing their day-to-day work? They're pushed by their managers to show business results. People results churn is not in their OKRs. And 2, the team who rolls out the coaching training to managers, how to keep this a mindset alive amongst managers. Well, that's very topical for me because I'm training some managers in coaching approaches next week. So
I'll tell you, the part that always worries me is whenever I hear anything that sounds like it's a trade-off. People or money. It truly is not. I mean, one of the last things I did with McKinsey Global Institute was this report on the value of human capital. And the first one was on the value of mobility for the individual. And that was, up to 2 times your career earnings just by embracing mobility, both, with inside a company and across, basically by taking skill adjacency, never doing the same thing again. Actually I was a maintenance guy. Then I became, a repair foreman. Then I went into, the building operations, something like that. That's for the individual. Answering the question directly, the second report that came out of that had to do with companies that prioritized money, financial performance, companies that prioritized people, or companies that prioritized both. And the value for the people who prioritized both was across the board. Steadier results, less volatile results, less churn in employees, less churn in customers. And did not give up anything on top line and bottom line. And so if you think about companies where they really drives their valuation, is consistency of earnings, not spikes and troughs. So I would say it's a fool's errand for people who believe that they have to make a choice. In fact, it shows a shallowness of thinking, honestly. I would insist managers do both.
That lights a fire within my mind because AOEC is last year certified as a B Corp, and that's quite a stringent certification process where we look at our strategy and objectives along the lines of people, planet, and profit. So I think that, to add into what you've said, the climate and sustainability additional goals, and we have some quite interesting, robust conversations about when profit should win out and when it should be people, and I do
argue that you have to see all of them have to be present all the time. You don't have to tolerate one ball juggling.
That's right.
I mean, since when I was writing with Bruce Simpson and my colleagues on purpose and the alignment of corporate purpose, including the first choice, which is what's your corporate structure going to be?
Yeah.
Be a B Corp or not, right? Not everybody's going to be Patagonia. You know what I mean? But I was just meeting with a guy who used to be at Patagonia and was killed. He's wonderful. No, but not everybody does that, right? But you have choices around what you sell, who you sell it to, who's your supply chain, how much pricing power you deploy, what you reward your employees, who you hire. You have all those choices to make as a result of purpose. I just think it's the way in which you grow your managers to say you have to then turn purpose into practical reality. That's your job. It's not an opt-out,
So we've got 3 more questions, and for those of you who are wanting to ask other questions, I don't think we'll have time to do more than the 3 that we currently have, and because I do want to hear a bit more about what comes next for you, Bill. The first one is, how do you retain talent when there are limited opportunities for promotion?
Promoting in role is the obvious one. Job expansion, right? Where you get them good use of projects, good use of short-term mobility, good use of secondments, making sure they actually have a decent team and a decent boss, right? Things like that, right? I mean, the classic nature of the exchange relationship at work, autonomy, influence, credibility, respect, right? Personal contribution. You emphasize those things, right?
Yeah.
It requires a better boss, I might add. When a person becomes better at their role, really feels like maybe they're topping out, it requires a more thoughtful boss to understand both the work and the skills.
That's right. I think that's right. So the next question, for those stepping into management roles or roles where they're expected to lead for the first, I think that means for the first time, how do you see a one-size-fits-all promotion milestone training versus on-the-job coaching versus individualized plans? That's from Gavin.
I don't mind large cohort-based thinking, particularly for junior roles and skill pools. I think there is actually something nice about that. Like, the next second lieutenant up, the next captain up, and there's broad markers. I think broad markers of success and proficiency are okay. I still think for an individual, though, for a given role at a given time, some of us, like when we were talking about role clarity, what am I asking you to do? What does good look like? You probably shouldn't go more than a fortnight without having a conversation about what you're working on, right? And what good looks like and with whom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like this is, there is something about, you can have the apparatus there that says, this is what knowledge development looks like. This is what problem solving looks like. But then, okay, you need to chunk that up. You know what I mean? I mean, so much about this, the growth stuff has to be, if the coaching and feedback are absent, the formal appraisal is useless.
I love that. That's such a great summary to everything, really.
Yeah.
So there's a comment from Emma. The CHRO should report to the CEO, not the COO or CFO. This should create more balance. Sadly, HR is still struggling for a seat in the boardroom.
Yeah, in some places. I mean, it's gotten better. It's still not what it needs to be. I could say that should be axiomatic. There are only two capitals that matter: money and people. Both of them need to report to the CEO. Any subordinating of it is a mistake, and it signals to everyone that you shouldn't be employed there.
Wow. Well, that's clear.
Listen, I get offers all the time to go be CHROs, always, and I never once would consider anything other than working directly for the boss. Board seat. I'll
So
tell you
if
what,
that's not
really
where
quickly.
you are, people, I don't know where that leaves you.
Well, I mean, I just think you shouldn't.
I guess.
I think you shouldn't tolerate it, because it shows that I believe it shows a devaluing of the actual gating capital. We're not short money. We are short people. Any board with a fiduciary hat on needs to understand risk in the plan. Risk in the plan has nothing to do with money. It has to do with, do we have a chance in hell of doing said plan?
Yeah.
You're right. That's people, not money.
That's yeah. You're right. So we've got just over 5 minutes left. God, that hour's gone. That's gone so fast. I could talk to you for hours.
You've been really engaging, Karen. It's been very easy for you to feed me along the bread trail.
Well, I've really seriously enjoyed hosting you, and it's been wonderful to hear from you and to hear your thoughts.
I don't think I'm all that provocative, by the way. I think I just give voice to things that people think,
Remember my Yorkshire granddad again,
Yeah, all right. Fair enough.
What comes next for you?
Well, I joined Modern. Okay, so it's a company called Modern Executive Solutions. Started out as actually co-founded by a guy named Mark Oppenheimer and his wife Michelle. And there was like Hudson something or another. They were in a boutique kind of search firm, and then it was bought and whatever. But they were really committed. They said to me, "Oh, we went the McKinsey of talent." I'm like, "Well, all right, watch what you wish for. I built that." But, I was arrogant enough to think, what could I have done with search and assessment, in terms of talent? And I'm 54, retired at 53. I really felt like I had a little bit left in the tank. And so here I'm building out all of our solutions and all of our consulting practice on saying, before you change the person, change the role, set the role in the performance context, purpose, strategy, culture, structure, op model, critical talent. And I'm collecting people who think similarly. And that means some really good coaches. I'm asking our coaches to invest more time in assessment, invest more time in team development and individual development, play upstream into talent strategy. I'm encouraging our search people to say, it's not about putting a bum in a seat. It's about setting the role up for success so you don't undermine the individual. Commercially, I'm asking us to underwrite the person. You place them once, you want to place them again, make sure they're set up for success, and underwrite the role, right? And so I have a feeling that it feels like, and the response we're getting early is, I think many people have a difficult experience with the Shrek firms. Both can, and I know that's candidates certainly, because I've been tried to be placed to me many times, as well as companies. I don't think they're being served very well by executive TA or executive search. Second, I am also trying to spend a lot of time with clients to say, your company likely has 24 roles that matter from a straight math standpoint, but you have many big skill pools that matter, and that's where the bulk of your people are. It should be okay to say, this is an optimization exercise. You really do want to optimize for those 2 roles where incremental things matter: experience, attributes, personality, contextual, facility, etc. For everybody else, stop treating these things like a unicorn. Right? Just, for instance, why do we allow negotiation for a pool role? Do you know what it does? It allows the young men to negotiate when the women will take the job. You invite comp disparity from the get-go. Why do we negotiate at all? Why not reset the comp at every level of promotion? One of the things that McKinsey did that I loved the most was every time you were promoted, your comp got reset.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. None of that stuff, right? I mean, I think, if you want to talk about equity and really talk about equity, B is an outcome. Equity and inclusion are where you do things. I want to consult on that. I want to make equitable access to the pipe outside the company and inside the company. I want the environment to be inclusive. All different ways of thinking, all different kinds of background, what we're doing. Do that. You want a place that people want to stay? Do that. Right? And by the way, listen, I'm a capitalist. I think it's okay to make money. I want to do good with the money I make. Right?
Yeah, sure.
In the world of a B Corp, everything we do has to be good, or a company that says, hey, I'm going to do good with the excess, that should be okay.
Yeah.
And change the human experience at work. When people don't quit? When work doesn't suck, right? When they don't work for a jerk,
And that doesn't sound like rocket science, except
it's so not. It's so not, right? It did not take Dr. Schaninger to come up with that one, right? You know what I mean?
Are we allowed to mention the book yet, or is that
good.
Is that a secret?
Yeah, no, it's doing great. No, oh yeah, the new book. Yeah,
the new book.
Okay, so obviously, Power to the Middle is out, and like I said, if you are interested in my dulcet tones to put you to sleep, it's available in audiobook. The new book, and we now signed a contract. My colleague and I, Christy Smith. The working title. I'm sure they're going to make us change this, but the working title currently is "Stupid Shit We've Told You Along the Way," and that's intended to be. I've been paying attention to this for 30 some years. 1990 onward, 1990 to the Y2K, when we were convinced nothing was going to work. Remember that? Oh my God, what's going to happen? The dot-com era, the hyperfixation on options, the A players. I mean, come on. We've done all the iconic. What does Jack Welch say? Who cares? He didn't know that it was all in GE Capital.
I love the title. Some of us where I work are reading the No Bullshit Strategy at the moment. So if that title can get through, then I hope yours does.
I mean, listen, they landed, the no asshole rule. So I think that's probably all work, right? Maybe I can get it through.
We just really have a minute, but I'm so grateful to you for being with us today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with our community.
Well, thank you.
We'll definitely.
Can I give a shout out to my colleagues at Modern? We have some amazing coaches, some of them Brits, some of them Americans. Most of them are assessment and coaching professionals. But should you think about it, I know they also like to participate in the broader community. Modern Executive Solutions, available and find it. And they're great. It's really good.
And we'll talk about it on LinkedIn, and let's stay in touch. And
I'll plug it as well. Thank you so much.
Definitely let me know when the next book is available.
We'll do the rounds of the next one. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye now.
Thank you so much. See you. Bye-bye.